What if one man could build an entire village in a single day? From instant houses to looming monster attacks, Van's power is about to change everything. Let's jump into today's episode. If you want it more dramatic or more casual, tell me and I'll tweak the tone. The episode begins with Van in the village, where he manages to build a house in an instant, leaving everyone in awe. This house is far more suitable for land management than elemental magic, making his skill truly intriguing. However, Van believes that offensive magic remains superior for protecting people, as they would feel more secure under a lord who masters it. Camison disagrees, stating he would rather live in Van's city than Lord Jalpa's. He explains that while strength matters in war, people seek a ruler who improves their daily lives, and no one meets those needs better than Van. Astounded that he built an entire house alone, surpassing the capabilities of ordinary production magic users, the villagers become excited. Van decides to build houses for everyone if they provide the timber. The village chief also requests new homes, as their current ones are collapsing due to harsh weather. Though Van finds the prospect of doing all the work at once exhausting, he sees their miserable living conditions and decides to radically renovate the village. Van builds a whole new neighborhood in moments, replacing the old, dilapidated shacks. He explains his method as pre-planning, based on blocks of 4 houses with wide, grid-like streets. To avoid inequality, he makes all the houses identical for now, promising to customize them with stone once resources are available. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the villagers watch as Van also constructs a simple public bath next to his manor. Pluriel uses water magic to fill the tub, while Camison heats it with charcoal, creating a Goman-style bath. While Till and Pluriel enjoy the hot water, they praise Van's brilliance, noting that even at age 2, his knowledge rivaled adults and he was a prodigy who consistently defeated soldier boys in swordsmanship. Meanwhile, Van and Camison bathe after a tiring day. Camison expresses his desire to become as strong as Dee to protect Van. Just then, Dee and his men join them in the bath. The next morning, thanks to the combined efforts of the knights and villagers, a great trench is completed around the village. To bolster defenses and secure a water source for drinking and bathing, they decide to turn it into a moat. Esparta and his men begin diverting water from a nearby river, digging a trench dozens of meters long. While Dee and Camison work manually, Van follows behind to reinforce the bottom and sides of the canal. Despite the massive scale of the project, the shared goal makes the labor feel light. They believe that improving conditions will attract merchants and lead to a peaceful future. Van estimates the work will take a week, but the team works with such vigor that they finish much sooner. By the end of the day, everyone is exhausted except for Dee, who wants to continue as a form of training. The following morning, the connection to the river is finalized. Van thanks his men for their hard work over the past day and a half. As they open the gate and water flows into the moat, the village celebrates. Thinking ahead, Van worries about potential flooding during heavy rain and suggests creating a lake behind the village. Esparta agrees, noting it could serve as a reservoir during droughts, and they decide to proceed with the plan. Talia speaks up, saying, "Can you believe this? This village that didn't even have a waterway now has a reservoir lake. You won't have to worry about fetching water every day anymore." An old man thanks Van, adding, "Thanks to you, we no longer have to trek to the river just to get water." Van thinks to himself, "I'm glad water is now accessible to everyone. Life will become much easier for the entire village now." That night, Panamera and Arte are in their carriage, playing and laughing together. Panamera tells Arte to get some sleep, as the journey to that remote village is still long. Arte eventually falls asleep. The next morning, Van is busy with further preparations for the village. Talia notes, "Our defensive wall is complete now and much sturdier." Van reflects on his work, thinking, "I experimented with mixing stones into the earthen wall to make it as strong as concrete." A young boy remarks that bandits won't be able to attack them anymore because of such a formidable barrier. Van, wanting to ensure even greater safety, crafts some simple catapults and adds shields to the front so the villagers can fire arrows while remaining protected. Later, Van enjoys a meal, deeply impressed by the food. Esparta mentions that while protecting the village is vital, they must address its internal economy. He notes they have no connections except for traders who might visit once a month. Van says he can provide houses and furniture, and the village crops are enough for food. However, Esparta points out they lack spices and the ingredients for the baked sweets Van loves. Frustrated, Van shouts, "Let's think of something the village can sell. Don't hesitate to share your ideas." Camison suggests selling the wooden blocks Van creates or hunting monsters for resources, But Van rejects these ideas. Esparta notes that finding something unique to sell from this village will be a challenge. In the forest, a boy tells Van how much he is loved. When Van asked the men to test their weapons, they refused, not wanting to damage gifts from him. Van replies, "I'm happy you cherish them, but if you don't know how to use them, you won't be able to protect yourselves when needed." He discusses a shield made from orc skin, sturdy yet flexible. Camison strikes it lightly, not wanting to break it, but the shield shatters anyway. The boy bursts into tears, and everyone is shocked that a wooden weapon could cut with such sharpness. Suddenly, Ortho appears with some minerals to sell. He explains that the deep forest at the foot of the Wolfsbrook Mountains is swarming with powerful monsters, which is why they find so many rare minerals without even entering the mountains. He presents iron ore, copper, silver, and even a bit of gold. Then, he shows them mithril ore. Ortho explains that mithril is usually only discovered during official surveys by the Knights of Honor due to its rarity. Van realizes that if these are found at the base, the mountains must be full of resources. Van takes the iron ore to use immediately. He experiments with it, noting that since he didn't melt it for purification, he isn't sure of its purity. He decides to make an iron shield for the boy and crafts a sword as well. Van tells the boy, "Since you're my first customer, I paid extra attention to the decorations." Van uses his magic to craft a long sword, leaving everyone speechless. When the adventurers ask him to make swords for them as well, Van asks, "Is it so well made that even professionals like you want one? Since you brought me the raw materials, I will craft weapons for you adventurers for free." Pluriel remarks, "I won't know for sure until we test it, but I think you could sell these for a very high price." Esparta then observes, "I haven't heard much about extracting minerals from forests instead of mountains, unless there is a damas, a dungeon, or mana-rich site nearby." Ortho asks, "Do you think there's a damas here?" Zara replies that no one knows for sure since the area hasn't been properly surveyed. Esparta explains that discovering a damas would radically change their situation. People and goods would flow into this village from everywhere. Van realizes the weight of this. A new damas? The village's importance would skyrocket if we found one. Esparta adds that these sites are national treasures, filled with precious gems and resources. Usually, once the guild hears of a new one, they open a branch in the nearest town. However, Van notes that the village lacks the resources to host the guild right now. Esparta warns that while adventurers and merchants would come, the village lacks the food, infrastructure, and facilities to support them. Furthermore, Van worries that neighboring nations, most likely the Ferdinando province, might attack out of greed for the resources. Ortho suggests they should avoid looking for the damas for now. Pluriel asks if the Knights of Honor would be sent immediately if news got out. Van points out the core problem. "The issue is that I am the outcast of the Vertio family. If they learn the land I was exiled to is valuable, they will just move me somewhere else." Pluriel suggests that Van must develop the village and achieve significant results before the discovery, making it harder for the Vertio family to intervene. Ortho agrees they should avoid potential damas sites while gathering resources. Van thinks to himself that the adventurers are being loyal, as they would profit more by reporting the discovery. Later, while walking through the village with his maid, Van says, "It seems we are doing well in terms of housing, so I think this concludes our temporary renovations." Till asks, "Haven't you exhausted your mana reserves yet?" Van explains that he stops when he feels fatigued, though Till notes he seemed to be crafting things all day long. Suddenly, someone screams, "Disaster! Armored lizards are approaching from the main road! Everyone get behind the walls!" Van immediately takes command. "Raise the drawbridge and close the gates!" He addresses the villagers, saying, "I know you are all afraid to fight and that people might get hurt, but everyone's life depends on this battle. I will fight for everyone here, but I cannot protect everyone with my strength alone. Lend me your strength so we can protect this village together." And with that, today's episode ends. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon to receive all our latest updates.